Like when we use ChatGPT or Claude, I have to sit in front of a prompt box and I have to write something. And it doesn't really do anything if I don't do that. It's generative AI, right? So it just creates stuff. Why don't we sort of take the burden off of the user in terms of creation?
I remember OpenAI brought up this concept of ChatGPT Pulse. Oh my God, this is super validation.
I remember I was watching the video and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so much like Hux. I think at first I was really shocked. What we discovered is that people need to consume information in a totally different way. I had this colleague send me a 100-slide deck, and they were like, "Hey, could you review this, before our next meeting?" But I turned it into an audio overview, and so it's a type of personalization to the extent that, oh, I don't have to sit in front of my computer and read, 100 slides. I love to see how things work. I love to understand how things work. I have a lot of curiosity. I love learning. So I think the technology is what makes it possible, but that's not what you want necessarily to shine. Truly delightful things are the things you adopt. And you're like, wow, that's mine now. That's part of it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Founders Foyer with me, Aishwarya. This foyer is full of conversations. The space where creators, founders, and builders look for all the support and concepts to grow their ideas into products. While all of us enjoy adding AI into our everyday mix, only a few go on to rethink, explore, and change the way we experience AI. It's becoming important to preserve authentic self, our perspectives and ideas, and make AI work uniquely for us. Raiza Martin is the founder of Huxe, a personalized AI audio app, a futuristic take on AI and human intelligence. Formerly, she's the founding PM who built and grew Notebook LM at Google, everybody's favorite app, which completely changed the AI narrative when it released. She's the right person to deep dive into what's it like to build with AI, not just as a tool, but as a creative companion. Raiza, I'm so happy you're here on the show. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Awesome. Okay, first things first. What's your favorite pizza flavor? And what would you make me when I'm just showing up at your house for a pizza party?
Well, this is a great question because I am not actually the biggest pizza fan. And so for a long time, I didn't like pizza. However,
Mm-hmm.
I married somebody who is the complete opposite. He is the biggest pizza fan. And so actually, a lot of the pizza that I eat is pizza that my husband makes.
Wow.
And yeah, he makes like a really excellent margarita, which is
Wow.
just
Okay.
the basics, right? Like red sauce, basil, mozzarella. But he makes it at home. He makes it fresh. He makes his own dough. He
Hmm.
makes his own sauce. And so it's really lovely. So if you came over, that's what we would be doing.
Sounds good. And I mean, awesome, right? There's a lot of people now talk about how is it to host friends at home, to do all of these, sort of supper clubs and these parties. So I guess pizza is definitely one that can bring in a lot of people together. And when I saw the tweet
Yeah.
of yours which said, oh my God, like you can walk into my house and you can have a fresh pizza made, I'm like, damn, that's where we have to meet people.
Yeah, no, it's really insane because it's hard. It's hard to make pizza. I
Yeah.
actually thought it was easy, right? Because I was
Yeah.
thinking about it like you just buy the dough, you buy the sauce. But my husband took this totally opposite approach where he was like, "No, I'm gonna make everything." It's great. It's great for when we have people over because I get to say, "Well, I don't know how to make any of this, so I'm in charge of like cleanup." But he makes all
Easy.
the pizza. Exactly.
Awesome. I mean, that's definitely some partnership. And as someone who is actually exploring like pasta from ground up, I can really understand what it means to say it's
Oh
not easy
yeah.
because it's like so much craft, and also it's like super therapeutic to cook by oneself.
Yes.
So
I love it.
no, totally. And thank you for that margarita suggestion. I'm just going to show up someday for sure.
Please do.
Cool. Raisa, let's get into, or I would say, as a rewind to your Notebook LM days. I remember that from the time that you were building and posting about it, and a lot of people were discovering the app, you also kept talking about this concept of multimodality of AI outputs. So we saw with Notebook LM what is it is like to have a slice of URLs, text, audio, and all of these bits and pieces. And I also know you spoke a lot about personalizing. I would love to get your context into what sparked for you as an idea right from the times.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that the way that I imagined Notebook LM from the beginning, it was really this fully remixable surface, right? And I
Mm.
and I really was trying to think about, well, what's different about AI compared to the tools that we have today? And one of the first ideas I had was we're quickly entering a fully remixable world. And to me, that was really compelling. It was really exciting, mostly because it hadn't been done before, but I could imagine that it enabled a new layer of creativity on top of what we already have today.
Mm,
And to me, all that really meant was sort of thinking about the product in three distinct parts, which is the types of stuff that you could upload to it or your inputs, the capabilities you have in the middle, which is like how you might be able to remix things, and then the outputs, which is essentially like the final product that you create.
mm,
And so with Notebook LM, a lot of how I talked to the team about it was like, hey, we just have to sprint on these three sort of core parts of the product, the
right.
inputs, the capabilities, and the outputs. And I think if we give those pieces to people, they'll
Mm,
be able to make something interesting. Like they will be the ones to tell us what's
yeah.
really resonating. And to me, it was just like a very simple framework of like, if we build this sort of technological thing, the people will show us what they want. And I
Mm,
think what was really incredible is as we started to build this up inside of Notebook, it became true. People did show us, and we learned a lot, I think, about
yeah.
particularly new workflows in the AI era where, as the products are changing, as the capabilities are changing, people's expectations of how products work are changing too.
No, that's very true. And I think Notebook LM was definitely a fresh introduction at the time when chat was largely the interface with a lot of the chat GPTs and Claudes that we had. And what I really liked about it is, as you mentioned, give this capability of, oh, like I can add this and sort of remix it the way that I want. And to me, what was also interesting, and as a sub question, I'd love for you to answer is a lot of people, when we think of multimodality, they think of, oh, like I can repurpose content. It was always looked at a way of saying, okay, I don't have to recreate something, but then with a small piece of content, I'll be just able to create more pieces of it or just create variations of it. But where I think I saw you leading from is more from this angle of how it gets super personal when you try to make it to be yours, and you add your layer of what you specifically want and how you specifically can fine tune it. So is there a difference you see in this, maybe like treating multimodal outputs from the angle of like making it very personal?
Yeah, I actually think that that's probably two cuts from the same pie, which is when you think about the modalities or sort of the optionality that now exists when we create new things, I think that that's a type of personalization, right? Where you can imagine, I tell this story all the time, where when we launched audio overviews in Notebook LM, I think one of the things that was really illuminating is that people were creating content of things that didn't exist before, right? So I wasn't trying to sort of generate a podcast about best, practices in product management. Like I could probably just listen to existing podcasts out there. Instead, what people were doing were they were taking materials of which there were no podcasts of, like
Yeah.
maybe it was like their lessons in school, their resumes, their landing pages, right? People were taking very niche things and then they were transforming them. And I think when we dug in a little bit deeper, what we discovered is that people really wanted to consume information in a totally
Mm.
different way, right? Whereas, like, I tell the story of I had this colleague send me a 100 slide deck, and they were like, "Hey, could you review this, before our next meeting? This basically lays out the plan for what we're trying to do." And I was like, "It's 100 slides, which is just like a crazy amount of
Yeah.
slides." But I turned it into an audio overview. And so it's a type of personalization to the extent that, oh, I don't have to sit in front of my computer and read, 100 slides. Let's say it was going to take me an hour to do that. I
Yeah.
could just listen to it on my drive home. And instead it would take 20 minutes. It could become a more passive activity. And that gives me a little bit more choice as a user. Now, on I think what I think of as true personalization front, I think you have to go a step beyond taking just the user's intent, right? Like when I think
Mm.
about personalization, it goes hand in hand with this other thing, which is proactivity.
Oh, yeah.
And I think today a lot of the products that we use rely on the user to extract value from it, right? Like when we use ChatGPT or Claude, I have to sit in front of a prompt box and I have to write something. And it doesn't really do anything if I don't do that. And so the key here is like, well, how do I then build something that doesn't need you to type something first, right? How do we make the AI go first? And how do we make sure that it's actually pretty good?
Yeah, no, that is so true. And I think we're also at this age where, first off, we're made to believe that there's a lot for us to share in terms of context to a lot of these AI models, which I guess
Yeah.
is great as long as we decide how we want things to be. But then where it gets very blurry is when people talk about these humongous templates, and then there's like a style to go prompt your models, and there's like, oh my God, like copy paste this template for you to get exactly this output. And I also found that how we're so making AI models spit the same output that would come for any other person. And that's why I feel like this true personalization definitely gets hindered, because if everybody has the same output, if there's like so much sameness in the tools and in the way we use the tools, then I guess there's nothing unique that you can really find for how you want to use AI. So I
Yeah.
guess like, yeah, like how you mentioned, which in terms of like, oh, it gives me the control, and it also helps me get proactive without me having to say 1,000 things about what I want, is definitely like a fascinating step, I guess, for us to go forward.
I mean, I think that's a really good point. I think that when you look at a lot of these posts on Reddit, on Twitter, right, when people are like, hey, use this prompt to make sure that it always does this particular task correctly. I think we are just in the very, primitive stages of AI,
Yeah.
where a lot of what we're still trying to do is just making it do a particular job, right? And it's like we're learning from each other. Hey, the capabilities of this tool is like maybe you can do A, B, C, D, and E. But then
Mm,
the average person might be, well, how did you get it to do, three of those things, right? And so the prompts are really helpful, I think, for teaching us or educating us on the capabilities. But
right.
I think, it's not really touching on personalization, like you mentioned. It's certainly not proactive. And
Yeah.
I think, especially if you've been doing this for a while, it's really cumbersome to always be copy and pasting these prompts. And then you're reading it and you're like, oh, what does this line say? Oh, I have to paste something here in the middle, right? And then later you have to scroll to the top. You have to read what you pasted. So there's just so many things I think that we can still improve upon. And
Yeah.
I do think that the future sort of shape and form of
Mm,
this interaction is like the goal is to remove all of this crusty stuff that we're doing
yeah.
right now, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what would be truly magical.
Yeah, no, absolutely with you. And it's almost like treating AI as a form of a lifestyle. And I guess to get there,
Yeah.
there's like, a start we've got to make for sure. No, in fact, which leads me to asking a little more about Hux, because I love that you're trying to build a system, like you mentioned, not ask people for 1,000 things and not ask them for prompts, but then just an app that gets to know you and can show you some cool stuff and almost like make you react to things to get to know more about you, at the same time fine tune this whole experience. So how are you really flipping the script? I would love for you to share what aspects of AI are you working so differently for Hux?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking about Hux. I think it's really exciting for us because I think when we sought out on this journey, when we quit Google, we were like, we want to do something interesting, something that
Mm,
people probably aren't working on yet or are early and there's still like so much to learn. And I think the fortunate thing is with the current time we're in, there's so much to learn.
yeah.
And I think specifically for us, when thinking about what makes Hux different, we took this approach from an insight that we observed a lot, right, with people, which is exactly the story I was telling about when you start up ChatGPT, when you start up
Mm,
Claude, there's a box.
yeah.
You have to type something in the box, and you're like, well, I don't know. I don't particularly want anything right now. And so for people who are just exploring or trying to see, hey, what does this tool have to offer me? If you don't have that prompt or that query in your mind, it just doesn't work as well,
Mm,
right? You'll probably try something a little bit goofy and you're like, okay, whatever, it works, but I don't know. I'll come back to it later.
mm,
And we saw this a lot, I think, with the voice assistants from the previous generation, right? Like Siri and Alexa and Google Home. It's like people only ever did like 3 to 5 things tops because you just don't know what it can do. And
mm,
so when we were building Hux, we thought about all of these old paradigms of like the user having a really high bar for learning how to use something versus like really bringing that bar down.
right.
And so what we thought about was like, it's generative AI, right? So it just creates stuff. Why don't we sort of take the burden off of the user in terms of creation? Why don't we take a strong perspective on here's stuff that could be useful to you, an individual person, give it to you, as you said, right, to react to. And
Yeah.
then that inherently makes the system better. And so that's how we think about Hux, which is
Mm.
we want to make the first move. We want it to be valuable enough for you to react to. And if you give us that next signal, it just keeps getting better and better and better.
Mm.
And so far, it's been like a really, really interesting experience because I think what we're seeing is like the rates of engagement, the rates at which people are coming back, and just like if you read, on our Discord, people really love it. And I tell the team all the time, I'm like, even Notebook didn't have this much love in the beginning. And so I
Mm.
feel like we're really onto something.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And you're right. Like I remember that there was this strong hockey stick kind of a growth for Notebook LM because in its early days, I remember that very few people were discovering it. But then once people saw this whole audio overview, like you mentioned, it just like skyrocketed. And then people started discovering these crazy use cases and started putting in a lot more effort into trying the tool. So yeah, like totally with you on the Hux concept because it's very interesting. There's it just feels like decades, but then it's almost not even a year now that people got used to AI
Exactly.
in the picture. Though it really feels like so many years have gone by. But then I guess though, while chat has always been this easy way for people to come ask anything and get done, I like this thing that you mentioned, which is, hey, you're not always obligated to come in and even if you want to ask something or even if you want to discover something, it's not always that you would want to go type in stuff. And I guess that's the time that audio as a modality was sort of introduced, where people were getting comfortable doing voice notes or like sharing things with AI models through voice as a modality. So it's interesting. I like that part which you said, which is like, yeah, we will take an opinion on what to show to people and also like get them react to stuff. So, like, just to hint on that, like, what are some of the interesting, I don't know, like use cases or like ways that people use Hux today? Would you like to share?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, it's really interesting. I mean, when we first put the product out there in early access in June, I think one of the most interesting things is that for people who are working in technology, particularly building in the AI space, I think you can think about voice, right? Voice AI in
Mm,
particular as like, oh, that's been done before,
yeah.
right? It's just kind of like, yeah, it's like voice AI. We can generate sounds, that sound like people. But when we gave it to a broad set of people, what we discovered was that, hey, actually, if you don't work in technology, if you're not actively thinking about these things, you have a completely different perspective, which is
Mm,
you're just evaluating whether or not it has a place in your life. And so one of the most interesting things, since we've put this product out there in June, is we've learned about the gamut of use cases for sort of non-tech people.
wow. Okay.
And this was really interesting to me because we have a lot of assumptions, and obviously like we are the aforementioned tech people. And so we had a lot of assumptions. We were like, okay, we're gonna do this like audio first thing. We're gonna make it voice interactive. We're gonna make it super easy to use when you're on the go. And
Mm,
so we had all of the pieces, I think, but we didn't have the narrative or the story of the people behind it who would actually be using it. And so when we gave it to people, I'll tell you a couple of stories. The first is there is this father who actually
okay.
drops his son off to school, and they do this thing where on the way to school, they queue up a deep cast, right? So they generate
Mm.
a podcast, they learn about things like dinosaurs, the solar system, sports. So they make a different thing each time, and it's like a thing that they bond over when they're driving to school. The child can interrupt at any time and ask
Very
questions.
sweet.
Yeah, and then after the dad, drops off his son, he switches to his daily brief and then he catches up on
Mm,
emails and news. And so it's really interesting because it's almost like, hey, there's this singular kind of like station, right? Or this product that knows that this person is listening to a bunch of like interests for his child, but is also listening to a bunch of his own interests. And so
mm,
personalization for that person actually is really quite interesting because it covers these sort of two dimensions of who this person is. And so that's
yeah.
been really an interesting learning for us. There's this other person, this person just used the app so much that I had to like call them and be like, why are you using it so much? Like, what are you even listening to? And this person said something interesting to me, which was, I said, look, it reminds me a lot of radio, but
Oh
if
my
the
God,
radio
yes.
could talk to me. And this is particularly, I love this sentiment because I used to listen to the radio a lot when I was a kid, right? When it was like, this was even before we had cable TV. before our TV was even, I guess I
Mm.
remember a time, right, when TV wasn't like all that interesting, but
Yeah.
radio was. Radio
Yeah.
was super interesting. And so this person was like, it's like having the radio on in the background while I work, and it keeps me company.
Mm.
And it was just like this really illuminating concept of like a person wanting to listen to something that is just going in the background, right? Pretty passive, keeping you company, but it's almost much more tactile in the sense that I can interrupt it when I want to and I can participate. So it actually fills a little bit of that gap a little bit
Right.
better than radio because
Mm.
you feel like you can join in. And so these have been a couple of just like the more interesting use cases that we're seeing. There's definitely one of my favorite things about Hux actually is like the spread of people that use
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
just because it's like people are so diverse and like the way that they use it, the way that they shape it, I feel like that's
Yeah.
a hallmark of a good product too, is like they can shape it to their own
Oh,
thing. So.
yeah, absolutely. No, and I think just as you rightly mentioned, since we're all in tech, there's this bias that we have towards, oh, it's going to be useful for ABC, and then we kind of form narratives around how closely this can be useful for tech users. But then there's this amazing couple of stories that you get from otherwise, like even senior citizens, from kids who would like have this lovely way of interacting with the app. Sometimes, like as we chatted, it's very very different from what we imagined it to be. No, in fact, when you explained about the kid and the father, the radio part definitely hit my mind. I'm like, oh my god, yeah, it
Yeah.
does sound like a radio, and like how we would press these knobs in our
Yeah.
earlier, some of these Sony devices and some of the
Yeah.
older nostalgic devices, where you're like, okay, let me listen to the weather now, and then like let me go and switch over to the songs, or let me go listen to the news. So it's definitely like peace in that, but yeah, where you can definitely actively participate. So yeah, this is
Yeah.
fun. Also, crazy because I a couple of months ago, I was doing this side project called Step Story. And then
Mhm.
the idea was a very similar use case of, I guess, what you could do with Hux today, which is I thought, okay, when somebody's going on a walk or when somebody's just like walking around, I want them to walk for longer, which means if I can keep something as a company for
Yeah.
them, like if they can keep talking to it or if they keep interacting, they're going to walk longer. So I thought,
Yeah.
okay, let's make it Step Story and then let's make people walk more. And then you wouldn't believe, like, it was just a very simple prototype that I put in, but so many people pinged me to say, oh my God, like this is a nice idea. We should try this out. And it's just like early in the times when voice models used to be like super expensive. I was like, oh my God, is there even a market for this? And wow, there's Hux here, like trying to solve a bunch of these things. So I'm sure like, like if I were to use it, I'm definitely going to use it like a walking buddy.
I think a lot of people do. And I was telling somebody this recently. One of the most fun things about the product is when people write in, they always tell us what they are doing while
Mm,
they are using the product, which is it's just kind of cute. It's like people write in and they're like, "Hey, I was driving and Huck said this," or "I was at the gym and I was listening to it for 20 minutes and it did this." And so we are starting to get a picture of like when people use Hux, which I think
mm,
maps pretty cleanly, right, to like you imagine when you might use like an audio product.
right.
But it really does kind of highlight this other surface for products that I think has been underutilized for a long time,
Mm,
where, mostly today when you think about building a new product, you're thinking about a product that you have to look at, that you have to sit in front of your computer or be on your phone,
exactly.
right? And you're kind of competing for the user's attention in this like very, very
Mm,
competitive, it's a very competitive space,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think about audio as like, hey, there's like a lot of times when the user could probably be listening to something, whether it's walking, exercising, driving, commuting, doing chores, right? And for the most part, like a lot of the solutions that we have for those times are still the same, which is
Mm,
like, music or listening to podcasts, and then that's kind of it. But I think if we give people like a third option that is interesting, that's like, hey, let me make interesting passive content specifically for you and the things you're interested in, and you can jump in and interrupt anytime. I think it does become like a much kind of different
yeah.
interaction pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to the point of like interacting with most of these AI models today seems more like I'm going to sit at the work desk. I'm going to probably like spend more time looking at various screens. But I guess this is also the way I'm seeing it is like a middle ground to what we spoke as AI as a lifestyle. It's almost like I don't have to second think to ask anything to AI, and not at the time and the space, because I can be anywhere and I can still feel like I'm actively participating with AI. So I guess it's not going to look more like, oh, I opened this app and then there's going to be like a ton of things that I have to prep in order to start my work with AI. But then it's going to be more like very fluent, very easy way of, I guess, talking to AI and working with AI. So yeah,
Yeah.
exciting. As a side note from this, I would love to understand your take on podcasts, because do you think this nature of the voice and the way AI integrates in this picture, especially you and I are on a podcast and there's this whole human element to it. What's your take on how this piece of Hux is transforming the way podcasts are consumed, or the way you
Yeah.
think podcasts could be transformed in times to come?
I mean, I think that's a really great question. And we did a lot of thinking on this when we were building Notebook LM. We certainly think
Mm-hmm.
about it a lot building Hux. I think that what makes podcasts really compelling today, when I think about why I consume podcasts, it's really to listen to the specific people that are on the show. And it's because I care about their background, I care about the things that they've gone through, I care about their take, whether it's about something they did previously or something that's happening right now. And I think about that as being a largely very human experience. And I think humans gravitate to other human stories. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
just a wonderful thing that we all participate in.
Yeah.
But I think about this other emerging class of media, which is different, and it's the class of stuff like Hux is in, which is this happens to me all the time, where something will happen, like this happened recently with OpenAI Dev Day. The keynote was like, it was pretty long. It was like over an hour long. And I was like, wow, I really
Mm.
want to know what they said in the keynote, but I don't really want to listen for an hour and a half. And I really want
Mm.
to know it right now, right? And in
Right.
some cases, you could sort of Google this and you can read the
Mm.
bullet points, but I do want something. There's like an in between, right? There's now an emerging class of things that I want that I never wanted before, which is instead of listening for an hour and a half, I want to listen for 5 minutes. And I actually want to be able to jump in if I have a follow-up question. I want the option to
Right.
extend it if I want
Mm.
to. I want the option to pivot it if I want
Yeah.
to. And so I think traditional media as we know it is probably going to evolve to support more of those use cases.
Mm.
And I think that's where it gets really interesting because it doesn't mean that you sort of have just this generative AI versus like human landscape. I think
Mm.
what you'll see more is a blending of the
Right.
two.
Right. More like a co-building experience with both together. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great. And like you said, it's a great way to extend context beyond one single medium. And in fact, that's exactly what I guess was this very nice part of Notebook LM, because I still remember the feeling that I had when I listened to the audio overview. It was, oh my God, it's so thoughtful, because I love this concept of what you folks called as disfluencies, if you remember, like the whole, oh, like it's not AI bots talking to each other, because until then I guess we've heard so many robotic voices, including
Yeah.
Siris and the Alexas, where you can easily make out that, oh my God, that's a bot talking, or it's like an AI voice talking, and I don't really care. But I guess it was the first time people cared about two AI voices, and for me, it was more like, oh my God, this is awesome. So I loved that thoughtfulness that went into making that feature, or that whole part of AI human interaction. And I guess it's also what I'm really seeing as I hear more about Hux. That's what you're trying to get through with this experience as well, with all of the live stations, deep casts, and all of these nostalgic stuff you're talking about. Can you walk us through your angle of thoughtfulness in product building? Because I know you've had that experience over time now. Would love for you to share. Is it also because you're generally a person who's excited by obsessing over and noticing, things like physical gadgets and all of these little observations? What's it really to be thoughtful in tech?
Wow. I do feel like that's a really deep question in terms of like building, thoughtful products and what it takes to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it has to come from a place of understanding your own motivations, like why you
Mm.
do anything. And so I think, to your question of like, does it come from a place, where you're obsessed with technology and gadgets and pretty much all of the magic that lives in these like everyday things we have, I
Mm,
do think that's true. I do think that as a person, I feel like I have a lot of joy in
mm,
general. Like I feel very happy. I love to see how things work. I love to understand how things work. I have a lot of curiosity. I love learning. And whenever I build something new, I try to infuse a lot of those same feelings that I think give me personal joy every day. I try to infuse it in the product and give it to other people. But it's
mm,
really, it requires a lot of discipline because I think, of course, I'm so different from other people. Other people are
yeah.
different from each other. And so to try to build something that inspires this positive feeling in others and does it uniquely, for you, I think you sort of have to take this deeply aspirational goal of like
Mm,
bringing joy, creativity, productivity. Like at the end of the day, I want people to feel smarter, more creative, right? As if like technology was really like working for you. Like I want to inspire those feelings, but then I have to sort of like take it down a few notches and think about if that's my goal, what is the underlying technology? How do I enable like that particular feeling in a user?
mm,
And then I sort of have to move in between that goal and the raw
mm,
technology and obfuscate as much as I can the technology part,
yeah.
right? Which is really difficult just because I think the technology is what makes it possible, but
Mm,
that's not what you want necessarily to shine. And I think this is not an easy thing to do, and I don't think you can do it in a short amount of time. Like even with Notebook, I think about this a lot. It feels like I left when we were like about 20% of the way through, right? Where it's like, well, I haven't
yeah.
really turned a lot of the pages on like the UX or like how to make this more intuitive or on mobile or things like that. So I think it's just like a really sort of like you need a longer time horizon to build something really thoughtful, something really meaningful.
Mm,
And really with Hux, my hope is just we learn fast enough that we're able to turn the pages really quickly. But I
right.
think in terms of like building thoughtful products, I think you have to come from an aspirational place of like, how do you want somebody to feel? And
Mm,
then work backwards from a deep understanding of that technology. And then
right.
just like really squeeze it like as hard as you can and make it as easy for the user to like grab onto that magic quickly.
Right. Yeah, makes so much sense. And I guess it's also sounding more like having this translation layer between tech and that aspiration that you want to go to. Because I feel like most of the builders, even though that aspiration is actually, I guess, like, is definitely a part of their journey, they almost treat it like it's the end goal. So what really happens, I guess, in the between is there's always this void because you feel like the end goal is like somewhere else and you've got to like reach there and it's going to take a lot of time, which I guess also makes it so much bland that you don't take or you don't rather translate that into a lot of these micro steps, which I think in what you mentioned is all of these smaller steps in UX or basically turning these different pages in UX before you reach that goal. But I guess
Yeah.
like from what I hear from your experience, it's like don't treat that as the end last goal, but I guess every little step that you do has to connect to that aspirational layer or somehow translate to that goal that you rather want to go to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's absolutely it. And I think having a team that
Mm,
embraces that mission and that mentality is really, really important because I think the way that you're able to do this quickly means you are building new things quickly, but
yeah,
you're also throwing away stuff at the same rate,
yeah,
right? Because you're just guessing, right? You
yeah.
try to make an educated guess, you try to inform yourself as much as you can.
Mm.
But I really believe that great products are built by shipping and unshipping things at the
Yeah.
same rate.
Yeah. And I guess there's also so much joy that you can associate with that because I do know how much it gets frustrating for people to put away something that they've worked on for a long time. Or it's more like, oh my God, this is an idea that I really loved working. And what do you even mean that you can't ship this? Or what do you even mean this is not going to work? But
Yeah.
what I also truly hear is the joy comes both ways. It's like knowing that, oh, this no longer works, and or rather, this is going to take a different direction, and actually being okay with that as well as a part of the joy, and not just about shipping. So yeah,
Yeah. No, I,
nice.
I think that's a big part of it. I think about it a lot in terms of like accountability as well.
Mm,
I think one of the things that's hard about unshipping or unlaunching things, and I learned this at Google, is it can feel very personal.
yeah.
Right? You feel like you failed. You're like, wow, I worked really
Mm,
hard. My team sprinted really hard. Now the thing is not launching or we're rolling it back. It feels like you made a mistake. And so one of the ways that I typically shortcut this, just,
Mm,
for purposes of velocity, is I take accountability for all of these things.
right.
Right? Like when things are working well, I make sure that like we celebrate it as a team and we're like, wow, check
Mm,
this out, going super well. When things are not going well, I just say, oh, hey, it's my bad. That was a bad idea. Right? People didn't love it. It wasn't great. Let's roll it back. I'm sorry. Here's what I learned. And so I think, especially in a small team, I think just being very quick to sort of like absorb that
yeah.
helps your team stay focused. And it's not so much that like I just want to take blame for like random things.
Mm,
But I think it's about like thinking about how you can productively take feedback. And so for things like product feedback, like I
yeah.
absorb the brunt of it and I just distribute it productively later on.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Truly, like what an early product builder should work like. Oh my God, I know what to delegate, and I know what to keep to myself, and have this balance.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good tip. I'm sure it's going to come useful for me. Yeah, yeah.
I hope so.
Cool. And in fact, you're the right person for asking this question too, which is building totally new interfaces from ground up, as all of what we're talking about in the last half an hour and so is almost like you're spinning up for new behaviors in people, and always accounting for, okay, what could work, what could not work, and being super nimble and iterative in your approach. So when you're put in charge of discovering something new and almost something like a very innovative piece of thing, where do you even start and how do you plan for it? Like what's your journey looking like, having built this again and again in the past?
I love this question. I think it's one of the most important questions, particularly as we build AI products.
Yeah.
And when it comes to thinking about new interfaces, the way that I think about it is I don't think about it from the technology perspective. I think about it from
Mm,
the human side, which is I try to guess how are human behaviors changing, right? As more and more technology becomes available to people, how will they want to use this technology?
right.
And what is the medium or the mode that will make it easiest for them to do that thing that they now want to do that they've never wanted to do before? And so we
Mm,
talked a little earlier about sort of this like remixable world, right? Like I don't
yeah.
want to listen to an hour-long keynote. I just want to listen to 5 minutes. Oh, but I
Mm,
might want to interact. And so in the beginning, what I try to do is I take a lot of different positions, right? I make a lot of assumptions about this future world where I imagine here's how people want to interact with media, right? So even if it's not true yet, I just make this strong assumption and I make a guess based on what I know about people and what I know about technology. And then from there, you sort of craft this story of like, well, if that's the case, right? And the
mm,
user wants to do all of these things that are not possible before, then we sit down and we think, well, what's this most simple, most beautiful way to do it? And then that's how we start building. And so the one tip that I give anybody is take
mm,
a strong position in the beginning, like tell like a compelling story about how different the future is going to be,
right.
execute really quickly, right, against your strong story and get feedback from
Mm,
people. Because I think in reality, especially if you are trying to build for something that doesn't exist yet or is futuristic, there will be nothing to copy from. You
yeah.
won't really have inspiration. And
Mm.
so the best thing that you can do for yourself is take that position, execute, get feedback, and do it all over again.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And I also feel like it makes you think the world has given you all the permission to go explore the way that you want, because there's nobody that's going to like come and say, oh, that's not right, or that's not how the way you do it. And it kind of gives you all the room to explore. And then, as you rightly said, go get feedback. And how much do you think is, the way feedback we take in and then go back to put in pieces of this and then get it almost shipped once again. How tightly is this velocity and putting something out, getting reaction, and going back to build? How's this journey been for you in terms of both velocity and also getting to the right thing as neatly and as smoothly as possible?
Yeah. I mean, I love this question because I think that when I worked at Google, right, there was always this tension of like, you have to do things to make the product better and better and better, but you're also expected to ship these kind of like groundbreaking new features, right? So there's like a little bit of tension between the
Yeah.
two. And there is a there's sort of this like overhanging notion of like, well, is it the right time to be making the
Yeah.
product better if I don't even know if this concept is the
Mm,
concept, right? And so I think I put my thoughts into two buckets, right?
mm,
One is, hey, this is a bug. We have to fix it. It's just something that the app will not work, whether or not this is the concept, right? The app just doesn't work if this thing doesn't work. And so there's like a very short and finite list of bugs
right.
where it's like we're going to address it. And
Mm,
underneath it, there's like the long tail of things people have said
yeah.
are bugs, but we're just saying, hey, that's not worth fixing right now, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a small list of this. But then on the other side, I think there's sort of like the paradigm pushing
Mm,
features, which to me in the early stages is actually like the more interesting, more important body of work to prioritize. And the reason I say that is because in this space of time that we're in right now, we're actually racing to learn as much as we can about people.
mm,
And so if we're fixing bugs, all we're doing is we're kind of just like figuring out, would this person have stuck around? Yes or no, if this bug was fixed, right? Then that's one body of work. But the
yeah.
other is actually, can you take, whatever, your 10 users and make it 100 by building
Yeah.
this new thing? Can you take
Yeah.
100 users and make it 1,000 by building this next thing? And so some things in the second bucket actually end up being exponential. And so
Mm.
that's where we put most of our thinking on.
Right. Yeah, that's a good framework to think about in terms of what brings you closer to success, and at least in terms of success at the product level, and also success at understanding where you fail quickly, or where get to meet that goal quickly. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
nice way to put it. Interesting. And as we truly talk about this aspect of building these imaginary worlds, and really taking that position of okay, I know this is how users would use it. I want to touch this concept of delight, because I've seen you quote that delight is one step past what's always familiar. So, which means it's more like, oh, like this is something that is noticeably there for people to look at. But as AI keeps advancing, what's delight like in this space of AI? Is it transforming along with AI, or does it still stay the same?
Um, I have a really kind of boring answer to this, to be honest with
Mhm.
you, but I I really
Go for it.
believe I really believe that delight lives in the border of what's possible, but it
Okay.
is it is really buoyed by utility, right?
Mm,
Like things that are delightful tend to also be useful in some way, shape, or form,
right.
particularly for sticky products,
Mm,
right? Like I tend to think that there are some classes of delightful products where it gives you joy and it's like really cool and you're like, wow, I love that. And then you
right.
never use it again. Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
I in my memory, I cannot name, right? Maybe 100 products that have made me feel this way. And it's so interesting to me that I absolutely loved it that one time and I never used it again.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one class of product. Don't want to build those. But there is the second bucket, which is, hey, this thing is so cool. Like it makes you smile, it makes you happy. And then it just clicks. It's like, wow, this is
Mm,
the thing I'm going to listen to every morning,
yeah.
right? I'm going to listen to it on my way to school. Whoa, I really love this, right? Like me and my son use it when we're driving to his school, and then I listen to it when I'm driving to work. But it's the
Mm,
sort of thing that people naturally imagine as part of themselves. And
yeah.
so I think delightfulness is sort of this thing that you experience where you see it and you're like, wow, that's cool. But
Mm,
truly delightful things are the things you adopt. And you're like,
right.
wow, that's mine now. That's part of me now. And so that's what
Yeah.
we're aspiring to be.
Yeah. That's definitely true. And it's also like you kind of get into the flow with the product, where you don't see yourself totally different from the way that you use, and then you almost get into being a part of the I guess it's funny to say, but then being a part of the whole interface and the way that you roll with the product in itself. So and like, yeah, I guess build habits around it, like in Huck's case. So yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
Nice. Here we are, one of the last questions, which is, I guess, with I don't know if this was super coincidental, and I'm sure you must have got this from so many people around. The day after Hux's, I guess, the public release, I remember OpenAI brought up this concept of ChatGPT Pulse, and in my
Yeah,
mind, I
yeah.
was like, oh my god, this is super validation, and I feel like the Hux team is in a good direction. But I also know there's this other view of how people see this as, oh, there's no moat now, or is it like the space is getting crowded, or is it like there's a fear of getting replaced? As a founder, and I think truly a product builder from heart, what's your personal view on this? And not just with launch, but I guess beyond in this AI time and what's happening around with us, is it right to bet on all of those aspects we spoke about, which is you and your motivations, your goals, rather than the idea in itself?
I mean, I think it's such a good question, and this is such a good example of this particular case, right? Where you're trying to build as fast as you can, you're trying to learn as much as you can. And then OpenAI launches something that feels like you are squarely like in their
Yeah.
path of like what they're going for next. And I
What did
think
you feel like? I mean, what was in your mind when you first saw the ChatGPT pulse?
Well, it's funny because I remember I was watching the video and I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so much like Hux, right? I think the visuals were similar, a lot of the marketing taglines were similar, even the copy was really similar, the UX was similar. And so I think at first I was really shocked. I was like,
Mm.
wow, could it be possible that they are so similar? And then afterwards, I think I was like really jazzed was my next feeling because I was like, wow, I can't believe it. Like we launched before they did, and I felt like it was incredible validation for the path that we're
Yeah.
on. But then of course, like the next thought was like, well, oh no. Now we're on the same path. Is that a good thing or not? And I think like, I wanted to give myself the space to feel all of these
I
things.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and then afterwards, after I felt it, I was like, look, in real life, I think that you sort of imagine that the race is tight, that AI people are always competing with each other and you're trying to steal each other's users. But I think in practical terms, it doesn't end up working out that way.
Mm.
I think this is what I learned from Notebook, which is when we launched Notebook, there were a lot of products that were actually quite similar to it because we took a little bit of time building it at Google.
Yeah.
And we were kind of largely building in relative obscurity for like the first 2 years,
Mm.
right? And I think that's kind of how it works. You kind of spend 2 years just like cranking and learning, and a lot of things like this will crop up where you're like, oh my gosh, you're building something similar, or oh my gosh, this big player is doing something that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think about what I learned from my time on Notebook, and the key thing is really that you should just keep going.
Yeah.
Right? It's distracting to sort of imagine, oh my gosh, OpenAI is kind of gonna cut you off and like take all your users. And it's like, I guess you could imagine that could happen, or you could imagine the
Mm.
opposite, right? You could imagine that maybe you build something really interesting, really fast, and people don't care if ChatGPT has something similar or adjacent or whatever, right? And so I think you have to make a bet that you are on the right track, your instincts
Yeah.
are on the right track, your users will take you the right way. And I think just don't give up. It's
Mm.
like really basic advice, but it's what I tell people. It's like, hey, we're just human, right? If we had to worry
Yeah.
about every time, we wouldn't get anywhere.
Yeah. And to a lot of these builders and founders who are listening to this, I know how every week there is like tons of tweets and shit posting on X about, oh, like this chat GPT just killed this, or this is just a rapper, or oh my God, this is dead, X is dead. What like it's just so, I guess it's one way of looking at things, but as you rightly mentioned, the other way to look at this is, oh, like we get to craft this experience, and there's a way that we get to be a part of doing something so new. So might as well take that jump and then try to go through
Yeah.
this, see where it goes. And of course, I guess it's at the end of the day a good learning in all. So yeah, like
Yeah.
that's a better attitude, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think like it goes back to sort of like myself as a person, which is
Hmm.
I think I choose to try to have as much joy in my
Yeah.
life every day. And if I'm afraid, it really eats into the joy part. And so for me, some things are really simple, right? Some things are just a choice. I could
Yeah.
choose to be afraid today, I could choose to be worried, or I could choose not to. And I think having that discipline is probably the key to being productive on most days.
Yeah, and that's beyond product and largely helps with
Yeah,
product.
yeah, exactly.
I'm so glad. I mean, that's a very important thing that you mentioned, and I just hope like a lot of builders get to experience that joy. I can so much relate to it because I love experiencing both like being joyful and also trying to take joy in very simple things, whether it's tech or otherwise. So I guess it also like how energy adds up. It shows up in these different pockets of different moments, and then yeah, it definitely accelerates. So yeah.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Awesome. Raisa, thank you so much for being here. And this is truly like a masterclass for, I guess, all of these builders who are looking at this. Oh my God, I want someone to really vibe with, understand what I'm really going through, and then share all of these nuggets and personal journeys. I think you just did that. Like you not just
Oh,
brought about these stories and anecdotes, which I think is super relatable for most of us building out in this age of AI. But I think what's more interesting there is the way it's just so heartfelt. It also feels like, oh, like yeah, there's someone out there I can relate to, and then have this whole conversation with. So yeah, I'm so happy that you got to do that here. Thank you so much.
well, thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking such thoughtful questions. I appreciate it.
Lovely. Thank you so much.